Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Alex and today I'm going to be doing a review of the much beloved Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. To give you a brief synopsis of this book, this is the story of Iris Winnow and Roman Kitt, two young people competing for the same position at the Oath Gazette. Iris's brother has gone to the front lines to fight for the sky goddess Enva, while the underworld god Dacre continues to gain new territory against Enva's army. Iris is unfortunately left alone to take care of her alcoholic mother, while Roman struggles against his father for what will become of his future. I am going to begin this review in a different way than I ever have before, which is actually to ask a question of my audience, and the question is this. For those of you who have already read Divine Rivals and you loved it, you found it meaningful, impactful, you felt that it had really good depictions of war, are you somebody that typically gravitates towards historical fiction, or do you primarily enjoy fantasy and young adult romance? Because if it is the latter, I think that this is an excellent choice. If a random person came up to me in a bookstore and was asking for a recommendation and they said, I like light fantasy, gentle romance, not smutty, lots of pining, has a little bit of a historical bent to it, but it's mainly focused on the romance, I would hand them Divine Rivals and I would send them on their way. Easy. If, on the other hand, you're somebody like myself who typically gravitates towards books such as The Book Thief, All the Light We Cannot See, or the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society, or you went and saw the movie The King's Man, and when you walked out of the theater you felt like a different person, I don't think I would recommend that you read this book. Now, there may be somebody down in the comments who says, but Alex, how can you possibly compare those other books to Divine Rivals when this was so clearly marketed as a fantasy YA romance? And to that, I would have to disagree. One of the things I actually heard so heavily promoted about Divine Rivals was how it depicted war and how realistic it was. So as somebody who has read many war stories, naturally I was intrigued. Iris tells us in one of her letters that her brother was born in 1892. Iris herself is 19 years old and her brother is a little bit older than her, so I was able to figure out that this book is taking place sometime in the mid-1910s. There are gas bombs, hand grenades, trench warfare. The correspondents type out all of their news articles on typewriters. This is very clearly an alternate history representation of World War I. The only real difference here is that there are gods and a little bit of magic sprinkled in here or there rather than countries fighting against one another, so I feel like my comparison is justified. Despite the title, there's really not much rivalry here, nor is there much time spent growing Iris and Roman's relationship. The whole thing felt pretty rushed. I didn't think that there was a great chemistry between the two of them. The most chemistry was when they were writing letters back and forth to one another, but even then it still felt pretty shallow. I enjoyed Roman more as a character in the beginning, but started to find him quite irritating towards the end. As far as Iris goes, I don't necessarily have an issue with her personality or the way that she comes off, as I do with her seeming lack of agency. Roman is essentially depicted as the perfect guy. He's handsome, dashing, wealthy, brave. He's always there, willing to save Iris from any situation that crops up. And unfortunately, what happens is Iris then doesn't get a chance to show her bravery, her strength, to see what it is that she is capable of handling, because she kind of just becomes this damsel in distress character that cowers in a lot of situations, and I really don't enjoy that. I much prefer stronger female characters. Now, some of the biggest plot points in this book are set off due to Iris's decisions. However, every single one of them seems to have an extremely negative consequence. When we reach the point in the book where Iris looks at Roman and she thinks to herself, we are meant to be together, I could not help but ask the question, why? Of course, that can't be a spoiler because Divine Rivals is a romance. We know that they're bound to end up together. I was just quite disappointed by the way that it happened. I feel like this was just one of those stories that was way overhyped. Everybody was talking about it. I couldn't stop hearing about it. And maybe that's my fault for putting too high of expectations on this story. I know that I'm not a romance reader. I am probably not in any way the target audience of this book, but I went into it with positive intent. I really wanted to love this. The story is by no means bad. I feel like I need to say that. There were some good parts in here that I personally felt or could relate to based off of my own life experience. I think that the book would have been better if there was a greater focus on Iris and Roman's self-reflection rather than the pining for one another, because it would have made their realization that they cared for one another more impactful. And so I think overall, the book should have been more focused on the war. I liked the lore about the gods. I feel like there should have been more of that because ultimately that's the backbone of this book. It's why the conflict is happening to begin with, why there's even a war going on. But what we did get in here I thought was fun. I am really glad in a prior video that one of my subscribers was sure to tell me that this wasn't actually an epistolary novel as I originally thought. Cue The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society, which is an epistolary novel. Divine Rivals is not. There are just some sections in here where the characters write letters to one another. Really glad I was told that because it tempered my expectations, as epistolary novels are some of my favorites. The letter correspondences were pretty fun. It's where we get the bulk of especially Roman's personality coming through, so I liked them for the most part, though sometimes they could be cheesy. The other thing I feel like I need to mention is that this is not a standalone novel. There is a sequel that recently released, so what do you think that we're going to end on? A giant cliffhanger. So I feel like I can provide this little recommendation to any authors that might be watching because it isn't a spoiler. Never, ever include a line in your book where a character says, "This isn't a novel with a happy ending." There has never been a book in the history of all novels that has successfully landed that line. Don't include it. I rolled my eyes so hard. Don't try to be cute or clever or meta because the only thing that it's going to end up being is painful. Outside of that extremely cliched part, I will say that the cliffhanger of this book was actually pretty decent. I kind of want to read the sequel, but if I do decide to read it at all, it's probably not going to be for a while. One, because I have so many other books that I need to read, and two, because I don't actually own the sequel, so that makes it a pretty easy decision at this point. Overall, I'm going to give Divine Rivals a 3. There were some interesting ideas in here where I felt like the execution kind of fell through a little bit, and other times when the ideas weren't wholly original and were pretty heavily inspired. So I feel like this is kind of just a middle of the road book. It's not great, it's not bad, it just is. Let me know down in the comments what you thought of Divine Rivals, if you have already read this book or if you were interested in picking this up. Maybe this is the book for you, and if it is, I think that's fantastic. I can almost guarantee I made somebody mad with this review, but that's just gonna happen from time to time, and I have come to accept that. As always, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day or evening, that you all stay safe out there, and I'll see you next time.